Friends, family, and activists held a rally at the Warrensville Heights Police Department Tuesday afternoon in the name of 18-year-old Audreona Barnes. It was just last week on St. Patrick's Day when a member of a cleaning crew found the teen's badly decomposed body. She was discovered under a pile of clothes and blankets on the balcony of this Cleveland apartment here in the 4300 block of Warner Road.
Mom, I'm still looking for her. Don't worry, we'll find Audriana soon. These were the words Audriona's mom heard every single day for 8 months. The voice on the other end? Her daughter's boyfriend, Benny Washington. He called her daily, offering comfort and hope. He even drove her around Cleveland, searching street by street for her missing 18-year-old daughter. But here's what Audriona's mom didn't know. While Benny was promising to help find Audreona, her daughter's body was rotting on his apartment balcony. I mean, she was already decomposing. In the same house where he made those caring phone calls. It was only when Benny was forced to leave his apartment that the apartment manager finally discovered what he'd been hiding after noticing the horrible smell. Audreona Barnes had big dreams. She wanted to join the army and serve her country, but she never had that chance. For 243 days, this 39-year-old man looked Audriona's mother in the eye and lied. He held her hand while she cried. He posted on social media asking people to share her missing person flyers, all while knowing exactly where she was. The truth about what happened to Audreona is more twisted than you can imagine. The level of evil in this case will shock you. What city are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I want to see how far this story has reached. Because cases like Audriona's happen everywhere, and we need people from every city speaking up about these things and possible solutions. Because what Benny Washington did to this family will leave you questioning how well you really know the people closest to you. Welcome to our channel. Right now, there are thousands of young women like Audreona Barnes who are dating older men, completely unaware that their boyfriend has a violent criminal past and is planning to hurt them. If you want to help spread awareness about age gap relationships and the warning signs that could save innocent lives, then please like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Your action now could help protect another young woman who might be in danger. Audreona Barnes wasn't like most teenagers. While her friends were still figuring out what to do after high school, she already had her whole life planned out. At just 17 years old, Audreona had graduated high school early. She was smart, driven, and knew exactly what she wanted. Ever since 9th grade, she had one dream that never changed: joining the United States Army. She talked about the military constantly. Her mother, Audriana, said, "It wasn't just a phase. This was her calling." Audriana lived with her mother in Warrensville Heights, Ohio. The two were incredibly close. They talked every day, shared everything, and made plans together. Akua was proud of her daughter's ambition and supported her military dreams completely. But in 2021, something changed in Audriona's life. She started dating someone new. His name was Benny Washington. And right away, there were red flags everywhere. First, the age difference. Audriana was 18, Benny was 39 years old. That's a 21-year age gap. He was more than twice her age. When Audriana was born, Benny was already old enough to drink alcohol legally. But the age gap wasn't even the worst part. Benny Washington had a violent criminal past that would terrify most parents. In 2010, he had shot a woman in the back over a $40 cocaine debt. Think about that for a second. He put a bullet in someone's back over $40 worth of drugs. The court sentenced him to 7 years in prison for that shooting. 7 years. That means he had just gotten out of prison a few years before he started dating teenage Audriana. Did Audreona know about his criminal history? Did her family know? These are questions that still haunt everyone who knew her. What we do know is that Audriana started spending more and more time at Benny's apartment. He lived on Warner Road in Cleveland's Broadway Slavic Village neighborhood. It was a second-floor apartment with a balcony overlooking the street. The relationship moved fast. Maybe too fast. Audriana was splitting her time between her mother's house and Benny's place. For an 18-year-old girl with big dreams, this older man probably seemed mature and stable. But people who knew them noticed things that didn't feel right. The way Benny controlled conversations. How he always seemed to know where Audriana was and who she was with. The fact that he was dating someone who could have been his daughter. Friends and family started to worry. Here was this bright young woman with her whole future ahead of her, getting serious with a man who had already served time for shooting someone. But Audriana was 18, legally an adult. She could make her own choices, even if those choices worried the people who loved her. Meanwhile, Audriana kept working toward her army dream.
Deciding to go to the military wasn't something that she just did on a whim. She's been wanting to be in the military since she was in the 9th grade. I regret not allowing her to start in the 10th grade when they offered her that chance because she was on the track to graduate early.
She was in contact with military recruiters, she was making plans, she was excited about serving her country and building the career she had wanted since she was 14 years old. Her mother, Aqua, watched all of this happening. She saw her daughter's relationship with this much older man. But what could she do? Aliana was an adult now. I just wanted her to be happy, Aqua would later say, but I was scared. Something about him didn't feel right. That feeling in her gut, it was completely correct. Because while Audriana was making plans for her future in the army, Benny Washington was making very different plans. Plans that would destroy not just Audriana's dreams, but her life. The relationship that started in early 2021 would end in the most horrible way possible just a few months later. And the man who claimed to love this ambitious young woman would become the person who took everything away from her. She had no idea that the man she trusted was about to become her killer. July 30th, 2021. Audreona Barnes woke up excited because today was special. She was finally meeting with Army recruiters about joining the military. This wasn't just any meeting. This was the next step toward the dream she'd had since 9th grade. Audriana had been planning this for months. She had filled out paperwork, studied requirements, and prepared for every question they might ask her. The recruiters arrived at the scheduled time and picked Audriana up from Benny Washington's apartment on Warner Road. She was nervous, but thrilled. This was her chance to prove she was ready to serve her country. The meeting went well. Audriana impressed the recruiters with her knowledge and determination. They talked about training, deployment, and career opportunities. Everything Audriana had dreamed about was finally becoming real. After the meeting, the recruiters drove her back to Benny's apartment and dropped her off. It was still daylight. Audriana was probably buzzing with excitement about her future in the army. But here's where things get confusing. The recruiters saw her go toward the apartment building, but did she actually make it inside? Did she go upstairs to Benny's second-floor unit, or did something happen before she reached the door? What we know for sure is that around 2:30 p.m. that same day, Audriana had her last conversation with a family member. She sounded normal, happy even. She was probably still excited about her meeting with the recruiters. They made plans to see each other later that evening, just a regular family get-together, nothing unusual. Audriana said she would be there. But Audrina never showed up to meet her family that night. Instead, something much stranger happened. Benny Washington received a text message from Audriana's phone. The message said she needed to be picked up at a gas station near his apartment. But when Audriana's mother, Aqua, heard about this text later, she knew something was wrong. That text didn't seem like it came from her, Aqua said.
Later on that night, she sent a text message to my boyfriend asking for a ride that didn't seem like it came from her.
It just didn't sound like Audriana at all. Think about that for a moment. A mother knows how her daughter talks. She knows how she texts, and this message felt completely wrong to her. After that strange text message, Audriana's phone went silent, completely silent. No more calls, no more texts. Nothing. Even worse, all of Audriana's social media accounts were suddenly deactivated. Her Facebook, her Instagram, everything just disappeared. For a young woman who was active online, this was extremely unusual. When Audriana didn't come home that night, her mother started to panic. She called Audriana's phone over and over. No answer. She sent text after text. Nothing came back. By the next morning, July 31st, Akua knew something terrible had happened. She contacted Warrensville Heights police and reported her daughter missing. But there was something else about that final day that made everything even more heartbreaking. Something that wouldn't come out until much later, during Benny Washington's trial. Audriana was pregnant. She was carrying Benny's baby. This 18-year-old girl with dreams of joining the army was going to be a mother. And Benny knew it. So Benny Washington didn't just kill his teenage girlfriend that day. He killed his own unborn child, too. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed red flags in a relationship that everyone else seemed to ignore? What warning signs do you think people should watch for when someone they love is dating an older person with a criminal past? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, because what happened next is where this case gets truly disturbing. July 30th, 2021 was the last day Audreona Barnes was seen alive by anyone other than Benny Washington. Her dreams of serving in the army died with her that day. Her plans to meet her family that evening never happened. Her unborn baby would never take a first breath. But for Audreona's family, July 30th was just the beginning of their nightmare. They had no idea that their daughter was already dead. They had no idea that the man they would turn to for help and comfort was the same man who had just murdered her. And they definitely had no idea that for the next 8 months, Benny Washington would put on the performance of his life, pretending to be just as worried and heartbroken as they were. The phone rang at Akua Avegion's house the morning after Audriana went missing. It was Benny Washington, and he sounded devastated. "Have you heard anything from Audreona?" he asked. His voice was shaking. "I'm so worried about her. This isn't like her at all." Akua felt a little relief hearing from him. At least someone else was as concerned as she was. At least Audriona's boyfriend cared enough to call and check. But that phone call was just the beginning of the most twisted deception you can imagine. For the next 243 days, that's 8 months, Benny Washington called Audriona's mother almost every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. "Any news?" he would ask. "I've been driving around looking for her. I posted her picture on Facebook again. I'm doing everything I can." He sounded like a loving, worried boyfriend. He sounded like someone who couldn't sleep at night because the woman he loved was missing. He sounded genuine. But here's what was really happening. Every time Benny hung up the phone with Akua, he walked 20 feet to his balcony. There, under a pile of clothes and blankets, was Audriana's decomposing body. He could smell it, he could see the flies, he knew exactly where she was, because he had put her there after shooting her in the head. But the phone calls were just the start of his sick game. Benny didn't just call Akua, he showed up at her house. He brought flowers, he sat in her living room and held her hands while she cried. He looked her straight in the eyes and promised they would find Audriana together. "We're going to bring her home," he told her over and over again. Even worse, Benny offered to help with the search. He drove Akua around Cleveland for hours, looking in empty lots, abandoned buildings, and parks. He helped her put up missing person flyers on telephone poles and store windows. Think about how evil this is. This man was driving around the city with Audriana's mother, pretending to look for a daughter he had already killed. He was comforting a grieving woman while her child's body rotted in his apartment. Benny even posted on social media. He shared Audriana's missing person photos on Facebook. He wrote heartbroken messages asking people to share her picture and call police if they saw her. "Please help us find Audriana," he wrote. "She means everything to me." Meanwhile, Detective Gregory Curry from Warrensville Heights Police was trying to investigate Audriana's disappearance.
I know that speaking with the recruiters, they picked her up at the boyfriend's house in Cleveland. They then dropped her back off there. They just don't know if she went back into the apartment or if she walked away.
He knew that in missing person cases, you always start with the people closest to the victim. So Detective Curry tried to interview Benny Washington, but Benny's behavior during that interview was completely different from how he acted with Audriana's family. With the detective, he was hostile and angry. "I hate the police," Benny told Detective Curry. He called the officers names and refused to cooperate. When they asked him questions about Audriona's disappearance, he blew up and demanded a lawyer. This was a huge red flag. Why would someone who claimed to love a missing woman refuse to help police find her? Why would he get angry instead of begging them to search harder? But Detective Curry couldn't force Benny to talk. And without evidence of foul play, there wasn't much he could do. Police never got inside Benny's apartment during those early days of the investigation, so the case stayed open as a missing person investigation. And Benny Washington kept up his act. For 8 months, he tortured Audriana's family with false hope. Every phone call was a lie, every hug was fake, every tear he shed was part of his performance.
She doesn't have anything. Her shoes are at home. All of her clothes are at home. She had no money, so where did she go?
Akua would later describe the psychological damage this caused. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat. She spent every waking moment wondering where her daughter was and if she was still alive. I kept thinking maybe she was being held somewhere, Akua said. Maybe she was hurt and couldn't call for help. I never stopped hoping she would come home. But the worst part was how Benny fed into that hope. He would call Akua and say things like, "I had a dream about Audriana last night. I think she's trying to tell us something. Don't give up." Or he would show up with new ideas about where to search. "What if she's in a different city?" he would suggest. "What if someone took her somewhere far away?" He kept Akua's hope alive on purpose. He wanted her to keep believing Audriana might still be out there somewhere. Because as long as she had hope, she wouldn't suspect him. The holidays came and went. Audriana missed Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Her birthday passed without celebration. Each milestone was another knife in her family's heart. And through it all, Benny Washington kept calling, kept visiting, kept pretending to care. He attended vigils for Audriana. He hugged her friends and family members. He spoke to local news reporters about how much he missed her and wanted her to come home. But every night, he went home to his apartment on Warner Road. He walked past his balcony where Audriana's body was hidden under clothes and blankets. The smell got worse as the months passed. The decomposition continued, and still he kept up his lies. By early 2022, it had been more than 6 months since Audriana disappeared. Her family was starting to lose hope, but they never stopped looking. They never stopped believing that somehow, somewhere, she might still be alive. Benny Washington had convinced them all that he was on their side, that he was just as desperate to find Audriana as they were, that he loved her and would never hurt her. But in March 2022, everything was about to change. Benny had been living in his Warner Road apartment for months, with Audriana's decomposing body on his balcony. But he had stopped paying rent. The landlord was getting tired of his excuses and empty promises. On March 11, 2022, Benny Washington was officially evicted from his apartment. He had to pack up his belongings and leave. But there was one thing he couldn't pack up and take with him: Audriana's body. For 243 days, he had hidden her remains on that balcony. For 243 days, he had lied to her family while living just feet away from her corpse. For 243 days, he had gotten away with murder. But his time was running out, because when Benny Washington moved out of that apartment, he left behind the evidence that would finally expose his lies. He left behind the proof of what he had really done to Audreona Barnes. And in just 6 days, someone would make a discovery that would change everything. The cruel deception was about to end. The truth was about to come out. And Benny Washington's 8 months of lies were about to catch up with him in the worst possible way. March 11, 2022. After months of missed rent payments and broken promises, Benny Washington was officially evicted from his apartment on Warner Road. 6 days later, on March 17, 2022, the apartment manager needed to check the condition of Benny's old unit. The landlord wanted to know what kind of damage had been done and what needed to be cleaned before renting it to someone new. The manager unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was mostly empty now, but something immediately felt wrong. There was a smell, a horrible, overwhelming smell that made it hard to breathe. The manager followed the stench toward the balcony. Through the sliding glass door, they could see garbage bags and blankets piled up outside. At first, it just looked like trash that Benny had left behind. But as the manager got closer, they realized this wasn't just garbage. The shape under those blankets looked like something else, something that made their stomach drop. The manager called the police immediately. "I think there's a body on the balcony," they told the 911 operator. "I think someone is dead up here." Cleveland police rushed to the Warner Road apartment. When they arrived, they carefully moved the clothes and blankets that had been covering the balcony for months. What they found underneath was the severely decomposed remains of Audreona Barnes. She had been wrapped in a blanket and hidden under a pile of clothing. The body was so badly decomposed that identification would require dental records and DNA testing. 8 months of exposure to weather, heat, cold, and insects had destroyed most of the physical evidence, but not all of it. The medical examiner was able to determine that Audreona had been shot in the head. This was clearly a homicide, not an accident or suicide. Police searched the apartment and found even more evidence. There were bullet casings near where the body had been discovered. Inside the apartment, investigators found a bullet hole in one of the walls. The forensic evidence painted a clear picture of what had happened. Audreona had been shot inside the apartment, probably in the living room area. Then her body had been moved outside to the balcony and covered up. The placement of her remains wasn't random. Benny Washington had deliberately put her body outside, where the elements would speed up decomposition. He wanted the evidence to disappear. He wanted her to become unrecognizable. For 8 months, while he was calling Audriona's mother and driving her around Cleveland looking for her daughter, Audriona's corpse was rotting just 20 feet from his kitchen table. The discovery sent shockwaves through the Cleveland Police Department and the local community. This wasn't just a murder case anymore. This was one of the most cruel and twisted crimes they had ever seen. But where was Benny Washington? Police immediately put out a warrant for his arrest. They knew he was their prime suspect, but finding him wouldn't be easy. In the days leading up to the discovery, people had been calling police about Benny's erratic behavior in public. He seemed to know that his time was running out. Maybe the guilt was finally getting to him. Maybe he realized that leaving Audriona's body behind was a mistake. Whatever the reason, Benny Washington was falling apart. On March 18, 2022, police spotted him on the streets of Cleveland. When they tried to approach him, Benny ran. What happened next was like something out of a movie. Benny Washington, desperate to avoid capture, ran straight into a stranger's house. The homeowners were terrified as this wanted murder suspect burst through their front door. But Benny didn't stop there. He ran through the house and jumped out a back window, escaping into the neighborhood. Police searched the area but couldn't find him. For one more day, Benny Washington was a free man. But his freedom was about to end. Forever. On March 19, 2022, exactly 2 days after Audriona's body was discovered, police finally caught up with Benny Washington. This time there was no dramatic chase, no jumping out of windows. He was arrested without incident and charged with aggravated murder and gross abuse of a corpse. As news of the arrest spread, Audriona's family finally learned the truth about what had happened to their daughter. The man who had been calling them every day, comforting them, helping them search, he was the killer. Akua Avignon had spent 243 days wondering where her daughter was. She had spent 243 nights unable to sleep, wondering if Audriana was hurt, scared, or still alive somewhere. She had spent 243 days trusting the man who had murdered her child. The psychological damage was almost impossible to comprehend. How do you process the fact that your daughter's killer held your hand while you cried? How do you deal with knowing that he looked you in the eye and lied every single day for 8 months? But the worst part was realizing how close the truth had always been. Every time Benny called Akua from his apartment, Audriona's body was right there on the balcony. Every time he posted on social media asking people to share her missing person photo, He knew exactly where she was. The discovery of Audriana's remains answered the question of where she was, but it raised so many others. Why did Benny kill her? Was it planned, or did it happen during an argument? Did Audriana know what was about to happen to her? And perhaps most importantly, how many other families are going through what Akua went through? How many other killers are out there pretending to help search for victims they murdered themselves? The case that had started as a missing person investigation was now a murder case. The man who had fooled everyone for 8 months was finally behind bars. And Audreona Barnes, the 18-year-old girl with dreams of joining the army, could finally rest in peace. But justice was still a long way off. Benny Washington would have his day in court, and when that day came, Audriona's family would make sure the world knew exactly what kind of monster he really was.
You took her away in a matter of seconds. In a matter of seconds, you took her because she no longer wanted to be with you, because you're a pedophile and you're a disgusting person.
May 2023, more than a year after Audriona's body was discovered, Benny Washington finally faced trial in Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. Judge William McGinty presided over the case as prosecutors laid out their evidence against the 40-year-old defendant. The forensic evidence was clear, the timeline was established. The motive might have been unclear, but the facts were undeniable. Benny Washington had murdered his 18-year-old pregnant girlfriend and hidden her body on his balcony for 8 months while pretending to help search for her. The jury didn't take long to reach their decision. On May 24, 2023, Benny Washington was found guilty on multiple charges: 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, 1 count of gross abuse of a corpse, 1 count of having weapons under disability. The guilty verdict brought some relief to Audriona's family, but the real moment of justice came 3 weeks later at the sentencing hearing. June 12, 2023. The courtroom was packed with Audriona's family and friends. They had waited nearly 2 years for this moment, their chance to look Benny Washington in the eye and tell him exactly what they thought of him. Audriona's mother, Akua Avignon, spoke first.
"You deserve everything you're going to get." Those are the words from a mother to her daughter's killer today in court. Minutes later, 40-year-old Benny Washington was sentenced to 38 years to life in prison for murdering Audreona Barnes. Now, Washington was arrested in March of last year.
Her words were powerful and heartbreaking. "I hope every time you close your eyes you see her," Akua told Washington. "Every time it's quiet, you hear crying. You deserve everything that you're going to get. You are disgusting." But Akua wasn't finished. She had 8 months of pain and betrayal to get off her chest. "You helped me look for her. You called every day, just checking on you, making sure you're okay. We're going to find her." When all the while you knew what you did to her. You knew, but you just kept calling me. You kept saying, "Oh, she's coming home," when you knew she wasn't. You're disgusting. The courtroom was silent as Akua continued. She told Washington about the pregnancy, how he had even said to her, "I miss her and my baby," while knowing he had killed both Audriana and their unborn child. Audriana's aunt, LaToya Clark, also spoke at the sentencing. Her words were just as powerful. "I don't even know what to say, but knowing that a coward actually killed my niece, it's just still shocking for me, her siblings, and the kids," Clark said. "I don't understand. I don't get it. You're way older. She's a baby. You killed a baby. There is nothing on this earth that an 18-year-old can do to a 40-year-old for you to kill her. You're a coward, and I hope you get everything you deserve." Throughout these victim impact statements, Benny Washington sat quietly. He showed no emotion, no remorse, no acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. Judge William McGinty then delivered the sentence that Audriona's family had been waiting for: life in prison. Benny Washington would be eligible for parole after serving 38 years. That means he'll be 78 years old before he even has a chance at freedom. Most likely, he will die behind bars. The sentence brought closure to a case that had haunted Cleveland for nearly 2 years. But for Audriana's family, no amount of prison time could bring back their daughter. As the court proceedings ended, one thing was clear. This case had changed everyone involved. The family members who had trusted Washington, the police officers who had worked the case, the community members who had helped search for Audriana. Everyone learned a terrible lesson about how evil can hide behind a caring face. Audreona Barnes should be 21 years old today. She should be serving in the United States Army, living out the dream she'd had since 9th grade. She should be making her mother proud and building the life she had planned so carefully. Instead, her life ended at 18, killed by a man who was supposed to love and protect her. This case teaches us several important lessons that could save lives. First, age gaps in relationships matter, especially when one person is a teenager and the other is approaching middle age. A 21-year age difference isn't just a number. It represents completely different life stages, power dynamics, and levels of experience. Second, criminal history matters. Benny Washington had already served 7 years in prison for shooting someone over $40. That wasn't a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. That was a pattern of violence that should have been a massive red flag. Third, we need to trust our instincts. Audriana's mother, Akua, said she had a bad feeling about Benny from the beginning. That gut feeling was trying to warn her about something dangerous. But perhaps the most important lesson is about supporting families of missing persons. For 8 months, Audriana's family lived in agony, not knowing what had happened to their daughter. They deserved better support from the community and law enforcement. Now I want to ask you something important. What do you think about Washington's sentence? Was life in prison with the possibility of parole after 38 years enough justice for what he did to Audriana and her family? And here's another question. How can we better protect young women from predators like Benny Washington? What warning signs should families watch for? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this case has made you think about the importance of supporting families of missing persons, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us bring awareness to cases like Audriona's and honor the memory of victims who deserve to be remembered, because every subscription, every like, every share helps spread the word about these important stories.